In today's modern parenting, we're focusing on teaching kids how to deal with conflict in a healthy and productive way.
According to the Child Mind Institute, one of the most effective things you can do is to show them how it's done. Joining us now is psychotherapist Nero Feliciano. Nero, this is a great subject. So how should parents teach healthy conflict resolution? Can you give us some scenarios?
First of all, model, model, model. One of my favorite quotes is Ralph Waldo Emerson. What you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So we have to, at home, are we yelling at people? Are we name calling? Are we apologizing when we can? They're looking at that first. What kids learn is more caught than taught.
I love that. And you're kind of bringing up the point that conflict resolution actually involves some skills, right? It doesn't just happen. You don't just become good at it. Yeah. So what are some skills kids should know and learn?
I think this is so important because they're not learning these skills out in the real world with all the changes that we've seen. We have quantitative data that every generation is getting a little bit more narcissistic and less empathic. So number one, perspective taking. Can they see someone else's perspective? Ask them questions. Why would that person say that to you? What would make them think it would be okay to do that to you? Have them put themselves in someone else's shoes. And one thing I always tell my kids, own what you can own. Everybody has some responsibility in conflict. Maybe you should have walked away. Maybe you shouldn't have responded when you had these big angry feelings, which are okay, but we want to think before we respond. That apology and repair is so important. Can you say sorry for that piece? Maybe not for what you wanted to happen, but for that piece that you owned.
Yeah.
And is there a difference, I assume, between little kids and older kids in terms of how you teach these things?
Listen, Kate, I think these rules are the same for adults. My husband and I talk about it in our marriage as they're little kids. But I always say, even when they're young, ask them more questions. Help them to come to that answer instead of just telling them. For example, what would it be like to be in that person's shoes? We're not telling them, we're asking them. And how would you resolve this? Okay, you both are fighting with that toy. I'm gonna take it until you guys figure out a solution to play with it together cooperatively. How would that work?
To the point of fighting, are there any boundaries parents should be setting with their kids around conflict? I grew up with two younger brothers, and there was always some tussling, got a little physical at times.
Which 3 of my kids are girls, so it's more emotional fighting, not as much physical. But obviously, we want to set physical boundaries. We want to keep them physically safe. No biting, no hitting, no pushing. But also the emotional safety is really important as parents that we set boundaries around that. And we can even separate kids into different rooms and talk to them separately if we see some of the emotional signs. So name calling, shaming, making fun of that child who's being punished. A lot of trauma and self-esteem issues come out of the own home when those behaviors are present.
I see don't take sides on that list too, which is probably hard for sometimes for parents. What if it does get physical? Do you intervene and pull the kids apart, or what do you do?
Yeah, you want to keep them physically safe, and you can tell them, and even when we send them to the rooms for any of these things, we can say, this is not a punishment. This is because my job as a parent is to keep you both safe. So until you calm down, and you can teach them some exercises to calm down, relaxation, breathing, you're going to be in different places.
Briefly, is it different if you're dealing with conflict for a kid and their sibling versus, say, a friend?
Yes, because you can control more of the environment and the responses at home. You can talk to both kids. You can't always do that to a friend. Parents may parent differently, so you can tell your children, do as much as you can, but at the end of the day, you can't make someone else respond in a helpful way. So sometimes maybe that's a friend you need distance from.
Love it.
Yeah, so interesting. Nero Feliciano, thank you so much, as always. Appreciate it.